Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Book Summary Podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive
Oh, fun.
into Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Okay.
It's all about, finding focus and doing your best work.
Yeah.
In our crazy, always-on world,
Yeah.
it feels like our brains are being pulled in a million directions at once.
Yeah, a million different directions. Yeah.
Well, Newport has some really interesting ideas about how to fight back against that
Okay.
and achieve what he calls deep work.
Deep work. I like it. It's fascinating how he contrasts deep work with something he calls shallow work.
Oh, okay.
Basically, shallow work is all that stuff that keeps us busy, but doesn't really move the needle, like
Okay.
checking emails constantly or getting lost in social media.
Yeah.
Deep work, on the other hand, is about focusing without distraction on the things that truly matter,
Okay.
the things that challenge us, help us grow, and ultimately lead to more meaningful results.
Okay, that makes sense. But does Newport just tell us to, work harder? Because honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm already working
Yeah.
at max capacity.
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Newport isn't just advocating for longer hours. He's actually arguing that deep work is a skill,
Okay.
something you can cultivate and get better at over time. And when you master this skill, you can achieve amazing things in less time, with less stress, and with a deeper sense of satisfaction.
All right, I'm intrigued. So how does Newport convince us that deep work is so important? Does he have any good stories in the book to,
Oh, absolutely.
illustrate his point?
One of my favorite stories is about a guy named Jason Ben.
Okay.
He was stuck in a dead-end finance job, basically just surfing the web all day.
Ah, yeah.
He knew he needed a change, so he decided to learn to code.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
He knew he had to conquer his distraction problem first.
Right.
So what did he do? He went full-on monastic, meaning he basically locked himself in a room with no computer, just textbooks and note cards
Wow.
for 2 months straight.
That's hardcore.
Mm.
But did it actually work? I mean,
You'd be surprised.
could he really resist the lure of the internet for that long?
Not only did he complete this incredibly difficult coding boot camp, but he actually graduated at the top of his class.
Wow.
And guess what? He landed a high-paying developer job in Silicon Valley shortly after.
Get out.
Talk about a transformation.
That's incredible. It sounds like Ben took deep work to the extreme, though.
Right.
Is that the only way to be successful? With this philosophy, I mean, not everyone can just disappear into a coding cave for months at a time.
You're right. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
And Newport actually addresses that directly. He identifies 3 groups of people who are particularly well-suited to thrive in the new economy, and they all leverage deep work in different ways.
Okay, who are these groups and how do they use deep work to their advantage? Give me the details.
Well, the first group is what he calls high-skilled workers. These are people like software developers, designers, writers, consultants, folks whose work requires a high level of knowledge and expertise.
Right.
Think of someone like Nate Silver, the statistician who became famous for his incredibly accurate election predictions.
Yeah.
He relies heavily on depth work to analyze data, develop complex models, and ultimately produce those spot-on forecasts.
So for these high-skilled workers, deep work is all about honing their craft and staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. The second group Newport highlights is superstars.
Okay.
These are the top performers in their field, the ones who consistently deliver exceptional results. Take David Heinemeier Hansson, the creator of the popular Ruby on Rails programming framework.
Okay.
He's known for his ability to work intensely and efficiently, churning out high-quality code at a rapid pace.
Right.
And that's what sets him apart as a superstar in the tech world.
It's really interesting how deep work plays a different role for each group. What about the third group?
The third group is owners, those who have control over their own time and can leverage it to build something valuable.
Right.
Think about someone like John Doerr, the venture capitalist. He's constantly meeting with entrepreneurs, evaluating ideas, and making decisions that shape the future of entire industries. To do that effectively, he needs to carve out space for deep thinking, for strategic planning, and for making those high-stakes calls.
Yeah.
And deep work provides the foundation for all of that.
So basically, whether you're a coder, a writer, a CEO, or anything in between, the ability to work deeply is becoming like this superpower
That's a great way to put it.
in the modern world.
It's like a hidden advantage that can help you stand out, achieve your goals, and ultimately lead a more fulfilling and impactful life.
So far, I'm really liking what I'm hearing. If you're enjoying this deep dive into deep work as much as I am, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. For more insightful book summaries, we've got lots more to come.
Now, here's the thing. Even though deep work is so valuable, Newport argues that it's actually becoming rarer. And this is where he starts to sound the alarm. He believes that our modern work culture is actually making it harder for us to focus and do our best work.
Okay, that's a bold statement. What exactly does he mean by that? What are the things that are pulling us away from this deep work state?
Well, he points to a few key trends.
Okay.
One is the rise of open office plans.
Oh.
Remember those massive headquarters we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The problem is these open spaces, while intended to foster collaboration, can actually be incredibly distracting.
Yeah.
Especially for those who need quiet and focus to do their best work. Imagine trying to write a complex report or solve a challenging problem
Right.
while surrounded by the constant hum of conversations and the visual distractions of people moving around.
I can see that.
It's almost impossible to achieve a state of deep concentration
Yeah.
in that environment.
Yeah, I can totally see how that would be a problem. It's like you're always on in those open spaces. There's no real boundary between work and, well, everything else.
Right.
What else does Newport call out?
Another culprit is our constant connectivity with smartphones, laptops, and notifications buzzing at us 24/7. It's incredibly difficult to disconnect and focus on a single task for any extended period.
Yeah.
We're constantly tempted to check email, scroll through social media, or respond to messages even when we know we should be focusing on something else.
It's like we're addicted to distraction.
Yeah.
We crave that next hit of dopamine, that next little ping of notification, and it's killing our ability to focus.
And here's something really interesting.
Right.
Newport also highlights the pressure on content producers, like writers and journalists, to maintain a constant social media presence.
Yeah.
He tells this story about Alyssa Rubin, this amazing journalist for the New York Times,
Okay.
who covers really complex and important issues. She felt this immense pressure to be constantly tweeting and engaging on social media, even if it meant interrupting her in-depth reporting.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of creative professionals are struggling with these days. How do you balance the need to promote your work with the need to actually do the work?
That's a tough one. It feels like you can't escape the pressure to be on all the time.
Yeah.
But if everyone's so busy being on, who's actually doing the deep, thoughtful work?
That's the million-dollar question. And it leads us to one of Newport's most important concepts,
Okay.
the principle of least resistance.
What is that?
It's a fancy way of saying that in the absence of clear feedback on what really matters, we tend to gravitate towards the activities that are easiest in the moment.
Right.
And let's be honest, it's much easier to check email or scroll through Instagram than it is to wrestle with a tough problem or craft a compelling piece of writing.
So what you're saying is that our brains are wired
Yeah.
for easy, not necessarily for important.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
From an evolutionary standpoint, conserve energy, avoid danger. But in today's world, that instinct might actually be holding us back.
Exactly. And Newport's argument is that we need to be more intentional, more deliberate about how we spend our time and attention. We need to actively choose deep work over shallow work, even when it feels uncomfortable or challenging.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this book is so popular. It's really tapping into something that a lot of us are struggling with, this feeling of being constantly busy, but not necessarily productive.
Right.
But so far, we've mostly talked about the problems. What about the solutions? What does Newport suggest we actually do about all of this?
That's where the real meat of the book lies. Newport offers a whole toolkit of strategies for cultivating deep work in our lives.
Okay.
And that's what we'll be digging into next. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into deep work. So far, we've established that deep work is increasingly valuable, but also increasingly difficult to achieve in our distraction-filled world.
Yeah.
Now let's explore some of Cal Newport's strategies for making deep work a reality in our own lives.
I'm ready to get tactical. We've talked about the why of deep work, but now I want to know the how.
Okay.
What are some of the things we can actually start doing today to cultivate this skill? Well, one of the first things Newport suggests is to choose what he calls a deep work philosophy. He outlines 4 different approaches: monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic.
Okay.
It's not about picking one and sticking with it forever. It's more about understanding the different ways you can structure your deep work practice.
Okay, break down these philosophies for me. What are the key differences between them?
Imagine you're a writer. working on a book,
Okay.
if you're following the monastic philosophy, you might retreat to a secluded cabin for a month,
Wow.
completely cut off from the outside world, and just write.
Yeah.
It's all about eliminating distractions entirely and dedicating yourself fully to your deep work.
Right.
Remember Jason Ben, the coder who went off the grid to master his craft?
Yes.
That's a classic example of the monastic approach.
That sounds intense, but also kind of appealing, like a deep work retreat for your brain.
Right.
What about those of us who can't just drop everything and disappear for weeks on end? What are the other options?
That's where the bimodal philosophy comes in.
Okay.
It's all about alternating between periods of intense, deep work and periods of more open, collaborative work.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Adam Grant, the Wharton professor we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
He structures his academic year so that he has semesters dedicated to deep work, writing, research, thinking, and semesters where he's more available for teaching and collaboration.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having designated deep work seasons throughout the year.
Exactly.
You can plan ahead.
Yeah.
And really immerse yourself in your most important projects during those times.
Right.
What about the rhythmic philosophy? How does that one work?
The rhythmic philosophy is all about creating a regular, predictable, deep work routine.
Okay.
Think of it like going to the gym for your mind.
Yeah.
You might carve out a specific time each day, maybe early in the morning before the distractions start rolling in, and dedicate that time to deep work. The key is consistency. By making deep work a regular part of your schedule, you train your brain to expect and embrace those periods of focus.
I like the idea of building that mental muscle for focus. It's almost like creating a ritual around deep work.
Absolutely.
Speaking of rituals, is that something Newport talks about?
In fact, he has a whole section on ritualizing deep work.
Okay.
He emphasizes that deep work isn't something to be taken lightly. It deserves a sense of ceremony, a set of rituals that elevate it to a higher level of importance.
So what kind of rituals are we talking about? Give me some examples.
Think about it like this. What are the things that help you get into a focused, productive state?
Mm-hmm.
It might be something as simple as choosing a specific location for your deep work.
Right.
Maybe it's a quiet corner of your home, a cozy coffee shop, or even a dedicated office space.
Okay.
The point is to create an environment that signals to your brain that it's time to focus.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like having a designated deep work zone.
Right.
What other kinds of rituals does Newport suggest?
He also talks about setting clear time limits for your deep work sessions.
Okay.
This helps create a sense of urgency and focus. You're not just aimlessly working. Until you get tired or distracted, you're working with a specific goal in mind and a deadline to meet.
Right.
And don't forget about defining rules for your deep work time.
Right.
Are you allowed to check email? Are you allowed to have your phone nearby? The key is to create boundaries that help you minimize distractions and maximize focus.
Well, rituals are all about setting the stage for deep work, about creating the right environment and mindset.
Exactly.
What about the actual work itself? Does Newport have any advice on how to approach deep work tasks?
He does, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
One of my favorite strategies he suggests is making grand gestures.
Grand gestures.
These are basically bold, deliberate actions you take to create an environment that forces you into deep work. It might sound a little crazy, but it can be incredibly effective.
Okay, I'm picturing grand gestures like renting out a castle in Scotland to finish writing your novel.
You're not far off.
Is that the kind of thing Newport is talking about?
Remember J.K. Rowling?
Yeah.
When she was finishing the final Harry Potter book, she was struggling to find the focus she needed at home, so she did something pretty dramatic.
Huh?
She checked into a luxury suite at the Balmoral Hotel in Edinburgh
Wow.
and basically went into deep work lockdown. It was a way of saying, I'm serious about this, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to finish this book.
Wow, that's dedication. But do you really need to go to those extremes to make deep work happen?
Not necessarily. The point is to find what works for you.
Okay.
Bill Gates, for example, is famous for his Think Weeks, where he isolates himself in a cabin with a stack of books and just reads and thinks for days on end. It's his way of disconnecting from the daily grind and giving himself the space to think deeply about the big picture.
Okay, so grand gestures are all about creating a symbolic commitment to deep work. It's like you're sending a message to your brain and to the universe that this work is important, and you're willing to go to extraordinary lengths to make it happen.
Exactly, and it doesn't have to be about luxury hotels or secluded cabins.
Right.
It could be something as simple as setting aside a specific day each week for deep work and making it non-negotiable.
Okay.
Or maybe it's about turning off all your notifications for a certain period of time each day and dedicating that time to focused work.
Yeah.
The key is to find a gesture that feels meaningful to you, and that helps you create a space for deep work in your life.
If you're finding these deep work strategies as inspiring as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insightful book summaries. We're just getting started, and there's so much more to explore.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about collaboration.
Collaboration.
You might be thinking, wait, isn't deep work all about solo effort?
Right.
And while deep work often does require solitary focus, Newport dives into the nuanced relationship between deep work and collaboration, arguing that they can actually complement each other beautifully.
Okay. I'm curious to hear more about that. How can you collaborate effectively if you're also trying to cultivate deep work?
Well, Newport argues that the key is to find the right balance. While deep work requires periods of intense individual focus, collaboration can be crucial for sparking new ideas, refining concepts, and pushing your thinking further.
Right.
He points to the invention of the transistor at Bell Labs as a prime example.
Okay.
It was a collaborative effort with researchers from different disciplines coming together to share ideas and work towards a common goal.
That makes sense. You can bounce ideas off each other, get different perspectives, and then go back to your individual deep work with a fresh perspective.
Exactly. It's like this beautiful dance between collective brainstorming and individual deep dives. He calls this the hub and spoke model of collaboration.
Hub and spoke, okay.
You have those hubs of interaction where ideas are exchanged. And then you have the spokes where individuals retreat to work deeply on their own. It's a powerful combination that can lead to breakthroughs. That wouldn't be possible with either approach alone.
So collaboration isn't the enemy of deep work. It's actually a valuable tool when used strategically.
Exactly.
What else does Newport suggest we do to integrate deep work into our lives?
One strategy that might surprise you is that Newport encourages us to execute like a business.
Execute like a business.
When it comes to deep work, he's a big fan of this framework called the 4 Disciplines of Execution, or 4DX, which is typically used by companies to achieve strategic goals.
That sounds a little corporate at first. How do you apply business principles to something as personal as deep work?
It's actually really insightful when you think about it. Imagine you're treating your deep work goals like a CEO would treat a company's goals.
Right.
You need to be clear about what you want to achieve, you need to track your progress, and you need to hold yourself accountable, right?
That's the essence of the 40X framework.
Okay. I can see how that could be helpful. It's about bringing a level of intentionality and structure to your deep work practice.
Exactly.
What are some of the key principles of the 40X framework that Newport highlights?
He emphasizes 2 disciplines in particular.
Okay.
The first is focus on the wildly important.
Okay.
It's about identifying a small number of ambitious goals that you want to achieve with your deep work time.
Right.
Don't try to do everything. Focus on the things that will make the biggest impact, the things that will truly move the needle in your life or career.
Okay.
Think about it like this. What are the 1 or 2 things that, if you achieve them, would make this year a success? Those are your wildly important goals.
It's about being selective, about choosing quality over quantity. I like that.
Exactly.
What's the second discipline?
The second discipline is to act on leads measures.
Lead measures.
This is about focusing on the behaviors that drive the outcomes you're seeking.
Instead of just measuring the results, you track the actions you're taking to achieve those results.
Okay.
So instead of just focusing on how many papers you publish, for example,
Right.
you also track how many hours you spend in a state of deep work each week.
I see.
It's about focusing on what you can control, the inputs, rather than just the outputs, because ultimately the inputs are what determine the outputs.
So it's about being proactive.
Yeah.
About taking ownership of the process rather than just hoping for the best.
Exactly.
I could see how this framework could be really powerful for anyone who's serious about making deep work a habit.
Absolutely. It's about taking a strategic, intentional approach to deep work rather than just leaving it to chance.
Right.
And that's really the essence of Newport's message. Deep work is a skill that can be learned and cultivated. And the more deliberate we are about our practice, the more successful we'll be.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into deep work, make sure to show us some love by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. For more insightful book summaries like this one, we've got so many more fascinating ideas to explore.
Now, here's where things get a little counterintuitive.
Okay.
Newport challenges us to embrace boredom
Embrace
as a
boredom.
way to enhance our deep work
Wow,
abilities.
embrace boredom. That doesn't sound very appealing. Isn't the whole point of deep work to get into a state of flow where you're completely engaged and energized by the task at hand?
You're right. Flow is a key part of deep work. But here's the catch.
Okay.
In a world of constant stimulation we've become so accustomed to, instant gratification and novelty, that we've lost the ability to be comfortable with stillness, with quiet, with the absence of external input.
I think we're all guilty of that to some extent. It's like we can't stand to be alone with our thoughts
Yeah.
for more than a few minutes.
Right.
We always need to be checking our phones, scrolling through social media, watching videos, listening to podcasts.
Exactly. And Newport argues that this constant need for stimulation is actually weakening our ability to focus.
Right.
It's like we're training our brains to be distracted, to seek out the next dopamine hit,
Yeah.
rather than to settle into a state of deep concentration.
So how do we break this cycle? How do we embrace boredom in a way that actually benefits us?
Newport suggests a few things.
Okay.
One is to simply be more intentional about creating moments of boredom in our day. This could involve taking walks without your phone, reading a physical book instead of browsing the internet, or simply sitting quietly and letting your mind wander.
Right.
The key is to resist the urge to fill every moment with external stimulation and to allow yourself to simply be.
I can see how that would be challenging, but also kind of liberating. It's like giving your brain a chance to breathe, to reset.
Exactly. He also talks about the power of productive meditation.
Yeah, look, but this isn't about...
Sitting in a lotus position and chanting, oh, it's about using activities like walking, running, or even showering as opportunities to think deeply about problems or generate new ideas.
I see.
The key is to let your mind wander freely, without judgment, and to see what emerges.
I love that idea. It's like turning those everyday activities into mini deep work sessions.
Exactly.
You're not just going through the motions. You're actually engaging your mind and allowing it to work on problems in the background.
Now get ready for this one. Newport suggests a more radical experiment.
Okay.
A social media packing party.
A social media packing party. Okay, I'm intrigued. What exactly is a social media packing party?
Oh.
And does it involve actual packing?
It's a 30-day experiment, and it does involve packing, but not in the traditional sense.
Okay.
The idea is to pack away all your social media apps for a month.
Wow.
And see what happens. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, no TikTok. Just cold turkey.
Wow, that's a big commitment. But what's the purpose of this experiment? What are you supposed to learn from it?
The goal is to step back and assess the role that social media is playing in your life.
Okay.
Are you using it intentionally? Or is it using you?
Right.
Are you getting real value from it? Or is it just a source of distraction, anxiety, and comparison?
I think we all have a love-hate relationship with social media. To some extent, it can be a great way to connect with people, stay informed, and be entertained, but it can also be a huge time suck and a source of stress.
Exactly. And Newport's argument is that by taking a break, even a temporary one, you can gain a clearer perspective on your relationship with social media and make more conscious choices about how you use it going forward.
I like that. It's about taking back control, about being more intentional with your time and attention.
Exactly.
But does Newport suggest just going cold turkey? Isn't that a bit extreme?
He actually emphasizes the importance of not announcing your departure. Just quietly step away for 30 days and see what happens. He believes that the act of announcing your social media break often feeds into the need for validation and attention, defeating the purpose of the experiment.
That's interesting. It's like you're breaking free from the need to perform, to constantly be on for your followers.
Exactly.
You're giving yourself permission to disconnect and to focus on what truly matters to you.
Exactly. And he's not saying you have to abandon social media forever. It's more about taking a deliberate break, a digital detox, if you will, to reassess your relationship with these platforms and make sure they're serving you, rather than the other way around.
That's a great way to put it. It's about being more mindful of how we're using technology and making sure it's aligned with our values and our goals. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into deep work. It's been a fascinating journey exploring the power of focused work and how to cultivate it. In our increasingly distracting world, we've covered a lot of ground, from the difference between deep work and shallow work, to the importance of ritualizing our work
Right.
and embracing boredom. We even touched on the surprisingly complex relationship between deep work and collaboration.
Yeah.
We've discussed some pretty radical experiments, like quitting social media for a month to regain control of our time and attention.
Right.
But beyond these strategies, I think what truly resonates with readers is Cal Newport's personal journey with deep work. He doesn't just preach these principles, he lives them.
He does.
And his story is a testament to the power of these ideas.
Yeah, it's one thing to read about deep work in a book, but it's another thing entirely to see it in action, to see how someone has successfully integrated these principles into their own life.
Right.
And Cal Newport's story is incredibly inspiring in that regard.
Yeah, he's been practicing what he preaches since his days as a student at MIT.
Yeah.
One of the most demanding and competitive academic environments in the world. Imagine being surrounded by some of the brightest minds on the planet, all vying for the same opportunities.
Right.
It would be easy to get caught up in the hustle, to feel like you need to be constantly connected and available to keep up.
It's like this pressure cooker of achievement, right? Where everyone's pushing themselves to the limit, and it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters.
Right.
But Newport was determined to do things differently.
Okay.
He was incredibly intentional about his time, setting aside dedicated hours for deep work and fiercely protecting those hours from distractions. He even had a rule about not working at night.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty unconventional for an ambitious academic. Most of his classmates were, pulling all-nighters and surviving on caffeine. But Newport prioritized rest and balance. He knew that to do his best work, he needed to be at his best mentally and physically.
That's a great reminder that deep work isn't just about working harder or longer.
Right.
It's about working smarter. It's about creating a sustainable system that allows you to do your best work consistently without burning yourself out.
Right. And it's about being clear on your priorities. Newport understood that his academic success was important. But it wasn't the only thing that mattered. He valued his time, his health, and his relationships. And he refused to sacrifice those things in the pursuit of achievement.
So how did this approach work out for him? Did he manage to keep up with his peers while maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
You bet he did. Newport was incredibly productive. During his time at MIT, he published multiple books, earned his PhD, and even landed a coveted tenure-track position at Georgetown University.
Wow.
All while rarely working, past 5 or 6 p.m. during the work week.
That's incredible.
Pretty impressive.
It really shows that you don't have to sacrifice your well-being or your personal life to achieve great things.
Exactly.
In fact, it seems like prioritizing those things actually enhances your ability to do your best work.
It's a testament to the power of deep work and intentional living. When we prioritize depth, we can accomplish remarkable things even with limited time. It's about making every minute count, about being fully present and engaged in whatever we're doing.
It's quality over quantity, right? It's not about how many hours you put in,
Exactly.
but how much you get out of those hours. And that's a really empowering message.
Absolutely. And Newport continued to refine his deep work habits. As he transitioned into his role as a professor at Georgetown, he knew that the demands on his time would only increase with teaching, research, writing, and administrative responsibilities.
Right.
So he had to become even more strategic about how he structured his days and protected his time and energy.
It makes sense. As you progress in your career, the distractions and demands only multiply. So it's even more crucial to have a system in place that allows you to focus on what truly matters.
He doubled down on his commitment to fixed schedule productivity, making sure he had dedicated time for research, writing, and teaching. And he continued to experiment with different strategies for managing his inbox, minimizing meetings, and protecting his time from the endless demands of shallow work.
It sounds like an ongoing process of refinement, of constantly adapting your deep work strategies to fit your evolving needs and circumstances.
Exactly, and that's a crucial point. Newport emphasizes throughout the book, deep work is not a destination, it's a journey.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of learning, experimenting, and refining our habits. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another, and what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow.
Right.
It's about being flexible, about listening to your own needs and rhythms, and about constantly seeking out new ways to improve your deep work practice.
And it's important to remember that deep work is not just about productivity or achievement. It's about living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
I-
It's about doing work that matters, about making a contribution, about feeling a sense of purpose. It's about aligning your actions with your values and creating something of real value. So it's not just about getting more done. It's about getting the right things done. It's about focusing on the work. That brings you joy. That challenges you. That makes you feel alive.
And that brings us to a really powerful question that Newport poses in the book, one that I think is worth pondering. As we wrap up our deep dive, what makes you come alive?
That's a great question. It's about identifying those activities that ignite your passion, that challenge you, that make you feel truly engaged and energized.
Once you know the answer to that question, ask yourself how deep work can help you pursue those activities with more focus, more skill, and more purpose. It's about finding that intersection between what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs, and then dedicating yourself to those pursuits with the kind of focus and intention. That deep work allows...
It's about aligning your work with your deepest values and aspirations. It's about creating a life that feels both meaningful and fulfilling.
And that's ultimately what Cal Newport's deep work is all about. It's a guide to not just doing better work, but to living a better life.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ideas with you. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into deep work, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insightful book summaries like this one.
And remember, deep work is not a luxury. It's a necessity. In a world that's increasingly demanding our attention and pulling us in 1,000 different directions, it's a skill that we can all cultivate, a habit that we can all develop, and a path that can lead us to a more productive, more meaningful, and more fulfilling life.
So go forth and do your deep work. The world needs your best, most focused effort. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you in the next episode.